You're listening to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast, a place for sex addicts to share their experiences of recovery, to help break the stigma, myths, and misconceptions of sex addiction. This podcast may contain topics of sexuality, sexual trauma, dysfunction, or other things that may be triggering, so listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. My name is Jason, I'm a sex addict, and I will be your podcast host for today. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to episode number 11 of the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast. Originally this week, I had planned on covering a different topic and doing a discussion around that, but the planning didn't quite go as I had anticipated. So I thought about doing an episode on perfectionism, letting go of perfectionism, progress rather than perfection, things that we hear in our program. You know, from the big book of AA, when we read how it works, this is on page 60, we claim spiritual progress rather than spiritual perfection. At some of our meetings in our abstinence statement, we read, the lust of the mind may take years to drain away as one works the 12 steps of recovery. Abstinence from the destructive and addictive behaviors, however, can begin today and is the basic foundation upon which all subsequent personal growth depends. Progress rather than perfection is the atmosphere for growth that we seek to promote. And I'm trying to do this episode with as minimal edits as I can. I usually do quite a bit of editing, so you can hear from that those are the types of things that I usually cut out, and I'm going to try to keep that to a minimum in this episode. So normally I'd like to do a full hour long podcast, either an interview, conversation, discussion, something like that, or covering a workshop topic like I did for the Music in Recovery episode. This week I'm deciding to do a short one and just kind of winging it off the cuff the best that I can. I get locked into the thought of perfectionism, where if I can't do it perfectly, just fuck it, and not sure exactly what I wanted to do this week. I thought that would lend itself to be a good topic for me to record. In my current step study group, we're discussing step 4, which is making a moral inventory of ourselves, looking at fears, resentments, sex inventory, etc. And it's a huge step, and a lot of people have been having issues of getting started with it, and I've found that I have had the same issues as well. And in working through the steps, on step 6, which is we were entirely ready to have God remove all these defects of character. In the Green Book, at the bottom of page 40, I wanted to read there and then going on to page 41. In working this step, we have found it helpful to refer to the list of character defects we made in our Step 4 inventory, and perhaps expanded with the help of our sponsor when we took Step 5. Our list includes all of the self-defeating attitudes and behaviors. Let's try that again. Our list includes all of the self-defeating attitudes and behavior patterns that have been revealed to us. Examples of unhealthy attitudes may include resentment, grandiosity, self-pity, perfectionism, blaming others, feeling like a victim, and entitlement. Our list of behaviors might include habitual actions such as raging, isolating from others, lying, manipulating, or avoiding conflict. We may have also noted our negative traits or approaches to life, such as greed, envy, selfishness, and self-hatred. It is important to realize that the words "these defects of character" refer to the exact nature of our wrongs admitted in the fifth step. In step 6, we focus on those defects that have come to our attention through our inventory work. We may see, for example, that our expectations of others have led to disappointment and resentment. We may notice that our perfectionism caused us to procrastinate, then complete a task imperfectly. It's funny that I should stumble on the word imperfectly. And I wanted to stop there. So it's that thought that causes me to procrastinate on things. When I listed out my character defects the first time going through the steps, procrastination was right there at the top. And I didn't really label perfectionism as a character defect, but I think through reading through this and my current round through the steps, that the notion of perfectionism underlies a couple of my other character defects. In getting this podcast started, the idea came about in 2017, and it took a few years of getting things together to be able to be at a point where I was able to record and post things, and the notion of perfectionism kept getting in my way of launching the podcast. I originally wanted to have a website that coincided with the podcast, and that was dragging me down. Hopefully we'll have one coming up here in the near future. But in order to break beyond that perfectionism and get motivated and post stuff, I decided just to say, fuck it. I'm going to, learn from my mistakes and get out there and post something to the world. In the first few episodes, I did have a few mistakes that I had to correct after posting them. I would publish the episode, listen to it as I was going to sleep, and say, oh, fuck, I made a mistake there, and try to correct it and repost it. So that to me was progress rather than perfection. Other ways that in my personal life that I've had that come up is I've mentioned before that I do guitar videos on YouTube, and there are some songs that I play that are extremely long, and I'll play for 7 or 8 minutes without a mistake, and then in the 8th minute just have I missed a note or a picking pattern or something like that, and there's only like a minute left of the song, and I said, yeah, progress rather than perfection, and I'll post it. And posting things on social media, a lot of people are quick to point out flaws and mistakes, and I just point out to the other 7 minutes where I played flawlessly, and thanks for pointing out that imperfection. When I have the chance, I may record it again and try to post a better version, in which I have. But the thought that I made a mistake, I will try to do my best in the moment that I can. Sometimes I will record things over and over and over, and I will post my best even though it's not perfect. being in this program has helped me be okay with that. So back to the step study group, we were talking about people who have been just stuck on getting started on step 4. And even though it is a big step, if you take it in small increments and just get started on it, not being able to do it perfectly the first time, that's okay. But, for me, just getting started on formatting the Excel spreadsheet that I used was a way for me to start. I did not list all of the resentments I ever had in my entire life, but I was able to jot down a few. Same goes for fears. When I first started working on my fears inventory, I had no fears coming into this program. And then when I sat and thought about it, more and more fears started presenting themselves. And now I'm really much better at being able to recognize things as fears. But in the past, I didn't quite know how to identify it. But I still made an effort to jot a few things down and be okay with that. With the steps, if we do them imperfectly, we are always free to come back and revisit it. I'm now on my third full round through the steps. I've done some of the steps many times, but circling back around, I'm able to dig deeper or find things that I left out the first time. So it is that notion of progress rather than perfectionism. Another thought that I had on perfectionism or making mistakes and learning from them, one of my friends in program often brings up tradition 4, which is each group should be autonomous except in matters affecting other groups or SAA as a whole. And on page 83 in the Green Book, that autonomy also means that each group has the freedom to make mistakes and learn from them at its own pace. And skipping a few sentences. Some of our ideas will prove effective and others will not. We have found that this freedom contributes to the overall health of our fellowship as the best innovations take root and thrive. In moving a lot of our in-person meetings to Zoom, we have experimented with lots of different things, and some of them have really worked and others haven't. But getting beyond that notion that we have to have everything perfect from the get-go, that we do have the freedom to make mistakes and learn from them has been beneficial. We found a number of things, such as using the raise hand feature in Zoom, through stumbling through different ways of approaching, who's going to be next in our meeting to speak. But yeah, going through ideas at the group level that, we can make mistakes and be okay with that, learn from them, and move on. And so I'd like to close this episode here, this short episode, with a song that I titled one of my mix CDs with. That's called Perfectly Flawed by a band called Otep. And thinking of making mix CDs, a lot of times I get stuck in the notion of perfectionism, that I've got a particular way that I like to order the songs. And if it doesn't fit, fuck it. I just can't do this. And I walk away from it. And what I've been able to do is make an edit of the CD that I like, listen to it. Oh, that song really doesn't fit there. Come back to it a few days later and make a better version of it. But so many times I've got just locked into the idea that if I can't do it right the first time, I might as well just give up. So back to this song called Perfectly Flawed. And here are some of the lyrics. It's the same doubt, the same dream. It's the same sabotage, 'cause I'm the enemy. It's the same night, same day. It's the same parasite feeding on the betraying. My weight, my face, my height, my race. I'm a mistake. My weight, my face, my height, my race. I'm such a disgrace. You're perfectly flawed. You're perfectly incomplete. Like cracks in the glass and faded photographs. You're perfectly flawed. You're perfectly incomplete. A work in progress. Imperfections will keep you unique.
It's the same doubt, the same dream. It's the same sabotage, 'cause I'm the enemy. It's the same night, same day. It's the same parasites feeding on the betraying. My way, my face, my height, my race. I'm a mistake. My way, my face, my height, my race. I'm such a disgrace. You're perfectly flawed. You're perfectly incomplete. Like cracks in the glass and faded photographs. You're perfectly flawed. You're perfectly incomplete. A work in progress. That's you.
I hope you enjoyed that and got something out of this episode. And whether it was in this episode where you can hear all of the motorcycles from the Harley dealership that I live near, or in past episodes where you can hear at least one of my 3 cats either eating or making noise. One of them was in heat a few weeks ago and had a hard time editing that stuff out. Or any of the number of ums and uhs and word stumbles that I've left in this episode. So imperfectly, I'm recording this episode and releasing it a bit later than I usually do. Next week, I've got a conversation all lined up and ready, so hopefully I'll be back on schedule. If you have any feedback for the podcast, you can always email me at feedback@sexaddictsrecoverypod.com. Just remember that we strive for progress rather than perfection. So thanks again for listening and keep coming back. The views and opinions contained in the Sex Addicts Recovery Podcast are those of the participants and do not necessarily reflect those of the Bay Area Intergroup or the ISO of SAA.